Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on the day before Arsenal's Premier League season gets underway. That match at Brentford tomorrow night in West London. We've had our first pre-match press conference of the season today with Mikel Arteta. I'm sure plenty of you watched it. It was streamed live, or the first part of it anyway was streamed live on the Arsenal website. And as you can imagine, plenty of talk about transfers and what's happening in and out of the market at the moment. Arteta pretty closed off as he always is, never really gives answers to a lot of the questions that come his way. Not just him, most managers do that. But I thought I'd go over a few things, talk about the latest situation when it comes to the goalkeeper, Joe Willock, a little bit of team news ahead of that game against Brentford on Friday night as well. So we'll talk first of all about transfers. Now, understandably, there's lots of frustration about what's going on at Arsenal right now. One day before the before the start of the season, they still haven't got a backup goalkeeper in, which I find absolutely incredible. I can kind of understand the fact they haven't sorted out the attacking midfielder yet, because that's going to be a very hard deal to do because of the expenses involved, because they haven't sold anyone yet. Although, having said that, I'll qualify that a little bit. For me personally, it should be one of the first things they sorted out in the window. If you're going to commit to £75 million on three players, as they have done, then probably they should have, definitely they should have spent, first of all, that money on a creative player, because that's what Arsenal desperately need going into the new season. They haven't done that, and now they're in the situation they are in now. But, having said that, obviously, a decent attacking midfielder, whether it be Maddison, whether it be Odegaard, it's going to cost a lot of money. In Odegaard's case, Real Madrid aren't clear yet if they're going to sell or not. In Maddison's case, it's just going to be an incredibly hard deal to be done because he's a first-team player at Leicester. They don't want to lose him. Arsenal have to spend a lot of money to bring him in, and they haven't sold anyone yet. But in terms of the goalkeeper, I mean, this is a backup goalkeeper to Bernd Leno. This is not a situation that should have dragged on this long. The fact that now it looks like they've pulled out, pulled out the deal for Aaron Ramsdale deal looks like at the moment it's off. As far as I'm aware, that's not totally off, and that it could end up being something that again drags on until the end of the transfer window. But it's looking a little bit unlikely after talks yesterday, and the clubs Arsenal and Sheffield United couldn't agree a fee. They're way off in terms of valuation for Ramsdale. So it looks like that deal is beginning to look more and more unlikely that it's going to happen. However, as I said, speaking to someone that I know this morning about that, there is a feeling that it could be something that could sort of continue on until the end of the transfer window, and there isn't a sense that it is absolutely 100% off just yet. But despite all of that, as I was saying, and the main point of this, sorry, I've rambled a little bit for the last minute or so, I can't believe Arsenal haven't sorted out the goalkeeping situation yet. Whether it be Ramsdale, whatever you think about him, whether it be Andre Onana, far cheaper, who is available at the moment from what I understand for about 4 to 6 million euros. But Ajax want to get something done very quickly if they're going to move him on this transfer window. Arsenal haven't been back in touch since the initial contact before the court case, as I've said before. You know, whether it be him, whether it be, I don't know, Woodman, whether it be whoever, the fact that Arsenal haven't done anything yet, I just think it absolutely incredible. Now they're going into the new season basically with one goalkeeper, because we know Alex Rudinson's not good enough for any prolonged amount of time in the first team. You know, Arthur Okonkwo, very talented, young, highly rated goalkeeper, but very inexperienced. You wouldn't want him in goal for any extended period of time in the Premier League. So imagine if something happened to Bernd Leno tomorrow in the first minute, and suddenly you're looking at going into the Brentford, Chelsea, Manchester City without Bernd Leno. It'd be an absolute disaster for Arsenal, and I just find it incredible, farcical that they haven't sorted out that position yet. And that was a big talking point of Mikel's transfer window. What's going on? Press conference. What's going on with the goalkeepers? He said, are you close to signing one? He said, I cannot tell you. I have no answers to that. He was talking a little bit more about the keeper situation, Emi Martinez, what happened last year. He said, what happened with Emi again? It's different parties involved in that decision. You have to make a decision based not on what you want. but also what the player's objectives and the history of the player. Is here for 10 years and the role that he wants to have in a team. Then you try and do something that maybe you're not able to do that you want to do. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes a player doesn't become available and you have to adapt. I wish that all the time it was always the way you plan it or want it. Now, when he talks about player becoming available there who wasn't, he's talking about David Raya, the Brentford goalkeeper who Arsenal wanted last summer that they were unable to get. They've remained interested in him, but obviously Brentford now are in the Premier League. They don't want to sell, don't need to sell. But they need to put something else in place. The fact that we've got this long into the summer and Arsenal do not have a backup for Bernd Leno, I just find it absolutely incredible. It's not good enough. It's mismanagement, and hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing happens to Bernd Leno and they don't pay the price for it. But if something were, if they had a training ground accident today in his last training session, then Arsenal are in serious trouble going into the first month of the season. So it's something they've got to sort out, and I can totally understand why there's so much frustration in the fan base about the sort of areas of the squad that haven't yet been filled this summer. Granted, look, there's still 3 weeks to go with this transfer window. In football, that's an awful long time. And as I've said before, I do expect things to happen. Arsenal will sign a goalkeeper. I'm convinced of that. I'm sure they will try and get something over the line for the attacking midfielder. Those are the two real sort of key priority areas for them now. But they're leaving it a little bit late. Mikel talked to length about the window and how Arsenal have done so far. And this is what he had to say. Well, in this first period of the transfer window, I think we've done a few things that we wanted to, and it's going to help us to get the squad in a much better place. There is still a bit of the window to go, so I'm sure that things will happen in either way. He was asked if the window's been a little bit underwhelming because of all the names that they've been linked to and haven't managed to get deals done, all the players that were expected to go who are still at the club, like Xhaka, Bellerin, people like that. He said it has been really busy, and you've just named a few names, and that tells you how much we had to do from the position that we started the window. We are talking about probably the most difficult transfer market in this industry over the last few years, and we are trying to adapt. The club, the owners, and myself, we all have the same interest, which is to make this team stronger, and we know that we still have things to do to get what we want. So he certainly seems to be suggesting there that more will happen in the transfer window, and what we've seen so far with the new arrivals of Ben White, Albert Lokonga and Nuno Tavares are not the only signings that we will see at Arsenal, but proof's in the pudding now. You've got 3 weeks left to do something. The season starts tomorrow. Arsenal have got to start moving quickly in the transfer market and get these positions filled, especially the goalkeeper situation for me. I think that absolutely has to be bang on the top of Edu's priority list. Get it done. If you're not going to sign Ramsdale, if you're not going to... what Sheffield United want. That's why the talks didn't go very well yesterday, because apparently they're miles off. Sheffield United are still looking at about 30 million. Arsenal are looking for about 15, 17 million. You're miles off. You spent the whole summer. How can you be that far off in terms of negotiations when you've done the whole summer and yet you're 1 day away and you're still trying to get a deal done when you're about £15 million off in terms of evaluation? It just seems like utter madness to me, and they got to get the things sorted, because this is such a huge season for Arsenal. You can't underestimate how big this is. 2 8th place finishes, absolutely not good enough. If you have another season like that, then Mikel Arteta, his job is going to be hugely under threat. It's already under threat, you would think, because of the pressure that he's under to perform. He's guided Arsenal to 2 8th place finishes. He has to improve on that, but also not just Arteta but Edu as well. He's been very underwhelming, shall we say, in the transfer business that he's done since he's been at the club. There's serious questions about him as well, and if this window tanks and doesn't go well at the end of it, then huge pressure not just on Arteta but on him as well. So they need to get something sorted, and they need to do it pretty quickly. One thing that might help with that is the potential sale of Joe Willock. We've spoken about that in previous videos, how close we're getting to it now. He has been at Arsenal yesterday, was training as normal yesterday, despite the fee being agreed. There's been a bit disagreement when it comes to personal terms. It looks like that deal is now getting very close to being done, and it seems like Joe Willock will end up being an Arsenal player a Newcastle player for around 22 million, raising to 25 million with add-ons. Mikel was asked about it today. He said the situation is that he's our player and we've held some conversations because it's not only about what we want to do, it's the player's interest and the role that a player can field in a squad and in a club. What he's done is put himself in a really strong position where he can choose a little bit with more options of what the future could look like, and this is what we're trying to define right now. Mikel was asked, will Joe be here in September? And he said, I don't know. In football, I'm not going to do that because you'll come up with a quote that you said to me at the end of last season. I prefer not to answer that. He was talking about there, one of the journalists who was asking a question today referred to a quote that Mikel had said at the end of last season, talking about, I think it was, something to do with what he'd predicted was going to happen in the transfer market and that sort of thing. And so he's basically, with that Joe Willock answer, he's trying to make sure that, again, a quote doesn't get thrown back at him a couple of weeks later. So that's where we are when it comes to the press conference and what Mikel had to say about a few things in terms of possible incomings and outgoings. To talk about the match tomorrow night, big game for Arsenal. Obviously, you've got to start the season well, especially with games against Chelsea and Manchester City coming up. In terms of team news for that, Arsenal are going to be without Thomas Partey, Gabriel and Eddie Nketiah. The latest update from Arsenal is that Partey should be back training by the end of August. Slightly longer when it comes to Gabriel and Eddie Nketiah. Both of them at the moment are scheduled to return to training in early September. So for Arsenal, you think that's certainly going to be Ben White and Pablo Mari lining up at centre-back tomorrow against Brentford. Interesting new partnership. They started together against Tottenham at the weekend. Obviously, Pablo Mari made a bit of a mistake, a big mistake really, for the goal that Tottenham scored. Didn't look very pretty what he did there when he was trying to cut out the eventual cross towards Son. But you think, given he's a left-sided centre-back and Ben White is the right-sided centre-back, those two will once again play together and Rob Holding will be on the bench. You just want to see Arsenal start this one well. It's going to be an incredibly difficult game. Brentford are going to come into it full of confidence and on a sort of up. We see that with newly promoted teams all the time. They always cause problems on the opening few weeks of the season because they're coming up with that momentum and that just confidence of being new boys in the Premier League. Arsenal are going to have to deal with that. They dealt with it pretty well last season on the opening day when they went to Fulham and won 3-0. They got the early goal on that occasion. I think that was massive for them. How they would love to do that tomorrow as well. Mikel was very praiseworthy of the job that Thomas Frank and Brentford have done in recent years in terms of their recruitment and how the club is run. He was full of praise for Ivan Toney as well. He's going to be a big handful for Arsenal. Powerful striker, scored so many goals at Brentford last season after his move from Peterborough. Brentford will be hoping that he does what Ollie Watkins did when Ollie Watkins went to Aston Villa in his first season in the Premier League and really adapted quickly and scored plenty of goals. Arsenal's centre-backs, Mari and White, they're going to certainly know they've been in a battle tomorrow at full time, having gone toe-to-toe with Ivan Toney. For Arsenal, you just want to see... You want to see very few errors. You want to see him not gifting the opposition goals, but then you just want to see a little bit of attack, don't you? You want to see some movement, some excitement. You want to get off your feet. You want to see something that you could be excited about that for the new season. Some good interplay, good movement, good passing, swift passing, not just slow sideways back to front, as we saw so often last season, and really we saw in the last couple of games at times in the friendlies against Chelsea and Tottenham as well. Not sure if I'm going to be at the game yet. Still waiting, fingers crossed, for the accreditation request to come back from Brentford. Haven't heard yet. Hopefully I'll be at the game. If I will, I'll try and do the usual type videos for it. If not, I'll still be covering it, obviously, but just from TV. But fingers crossed, I will be at Brentford in their new stadium for the first time. And until next video, have a very good day, everyone. Please do stay safe, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.